The overview is this information is intended only for the City of Los Angeles residential units subject to the Rent Stabilization Ordinance, otherwise known as RSO. And this is not intended for commercial units, and it is not intended for properties outside the City of Los Angeles. So the overview of the topics covered today. We have several topics, including city versus county, registration requirements, the RSO, increased protections, cost recovery programs, and contact information. So how do I know if the rental property is in the City of Los Angeles and under RSO? Next slide, please. We would first go to a website, it's zemas.lacity.org. You enter the property address, and there's a screenshot of the screen that you will see. If the RSO field says yes, then it is RSO. If it is no, then it is not RSO. Another option is to text RSO to the number above, and all this information will be available to you after the presentation. The PowerPoint will be emailed to you as well. So you can also text RSO to that telephone number and enter the address. So what happens if it's not located within the City of Los Angeles? Then you would contact LA County, and their telephone number is on the screen along with their email address and their website. Next slide. The Los Angeles City Rent Stabilization Ordinance, otherwise known as RSO. This is covered under the City of Los Angeles Municipal Code, Section 151, and it has to do with rent stabilization. It limits the annual rent increases. It provides just cause evictions, relocation assistance for no-fault evictions, and there are approximately 118,000 properties which cover about 640,000 RSO rental units. Next slide, please. So the rent increase protections, these rules only apply to RSO units. So previously there is a moratorium for rent increases, and so there is a freeze until February 1st of this year, in which rent increases were not permitted. Currently, the rent increases, allowable in rent increase is 4%, and there's an additional allowance for if you pay for utilities. And the increases are only allowed once per year. An exception would be if there's any cost recovery surcharges that are approved, and subsequently there will be no retroactive rent increases allowed. So covering the cost recovery programs, there's a few items that are required for all of the programs. First, which is a RSO registration certificate, and that's required to demand and collect rent. So a complete registration consists of payment of the annual bill and completion of the rent registry form, which is due on February 28th. Cost recovery pass-through surcharges cannot be approved until a current RSO registration certificate is issued. And there must not be any delinquent fees on your account. So here are the overview of the various cost recovery programs that we have available. And the first topic we'll discuss is Seismic, and I will introduce John, who will present the slides.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is John. Seismic retrofit program overview. The landlords must have received an order to comply from Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety (LADBS) in accordance with Ordinance number 1838-93 and 1840-80. Maximum temporary monthly rent surcharge of $38 over 120 months. It may be extended until 50% of the total approved cost is recovered. 50% of total approved cost passed through to the tenants plus a nominal interest rate. The cost is divided equally among all rental units and passed through to the eligible tenants. Next slide, please. Seismic retrofit requirements. Submit application within 12 months of completion of the work. Submit a $25 application fee if it's not the first cost recovery application within 1 calendar year. The first one is free. A completed tenant habitability plan, THP, is required. The THP tenant list is a crucial element in identifying which tenants are eligible for the pass-through. A finalized permit and a certificate of compliance from the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety, LADBS. Work must be completed by a licensed contractor or subcontractor. Copy of a fully executed contract, detailed invoices, and approved payments, for example, canceled checks, official bank statements, and credit card statements. Next, to please welcome my coworker Dolly to introduce Capital Improvement Cost Recovery Program. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So the Capital Improvement Program is one of our more popular programs within our cost recovery application because one, it encourages landlords to improve their RSO property, and it splits the cost of capital expenditures between the landlord and all tenants benefiting from the improvement. The total cost is 50% divided by 60 months, divided by the number of units that benefit from the improvement. And landlords are not required to obtain the approval of the tenant before making a capital improvement. The temporary rent surcharge, usually 72 months, is also capped at $55 a month. Next slide, please. A capital improvement is the addition or replacement of the following improvements to a rental unit or common areas of the housing complex containing the rental units, provided such new improvement has a useful life of 5 years or more. So this includes the replacement of electrical panels, re-roofing, restuccoing, installation of new windows and copper piping, installation of new appliances, such as washer or dryer, or even stoves, complete interior painting of common areas, and even complete exterior painting of a building. For exterior painting of buildings, that shall be considered as an eligible capital improvement once every 10 years. Next slide, please. So you must submit an application within 12 months of completion of work. Improvements must meet the following criteria. It must have a life expectancy of 5 years or more, be permanently affixed in place or relatively immobile, new and not used, not normal routine maintenance or repair. It must be a major component of the structure or system. And a copy of a fully executed contract, detailed invoices, and proof of payments are required as well. A cost breakdown for the installation of windows, piping, and other improvements where costs differ among units would also be required if that was the work that was done. And we want to make sure that we have finalized permits as required by LADBS before submitting the application. And now, Ms. Natalie is going to introduce our rehab program.
Thank you, Dolly. I'll be discussing the rehabilitation work program today. So any work done on or in a rental unit common area to comply with an order issued by LAHD, LADBS, LAFD, or the LA County Health Department as a result of changes in the building, fire, or health codes since January 1st of 1979, or to repair damage resulting from natural disasters such as fire or an earthquake. Any improvement made to a rental unit or rental property which was not mandated by an order, as talked about above, resulting from changes in the applicable building, fire, or health codes, or natural disasters such as a fire or an earthquake is not eligible for rent adjustments pursuant to this regulation. Next slide, please. The requirements for this program are to submit an application within 12 months of completion of work, submit a $25 application fee. The first cost recovery application within a calendar year is free. Improvements must have a life expectancy of 5 years or more. Temporary surcharges may not exceed $75 per month or 10% of the maximum adjusted rent or MAR. The surcharge may extend past 5 years until 100% of the allowable rehabilitation expenses are recovered. Any compensation, for example, insurance, court-awarded damages, federal or state subsidies, cash rebates, and tax credits must be deducted from the cost of the work when submitting this application. Next slide. I'm going to shoot this back over to John for the primary renovation program.
Hi, thank you, Natalie. Glad to be back. This is John again for overview. A primary renovation work is planned replacement or substantial modification of a system that requires a permit and a tenant habitability plan THP, including structural, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and/or abatement of hazardous materials. The applicant may need to provide a permanent rent increase. The primary renovation program provides a permanent rent increase not to exceed 10% of the rent. It is added to the calculation of the maximum adjustment rent MAR. The approved rent increase is phased in 2 years. For example, if $100 is approved, $50 is added to the rent in year first, and another $50 is added to second year. This program is limited to one application in every 5-year period. Next list, please. The applicant needs to submit an application within 12 months of completion of the work. If it's not the first cost recovery application within a calendar year, then you need to submit $25 application fee. A complete THP is required. It will help identify any impact the proposed primary renovation will have on the affected tenants. It also identifies the steps the landlord will take to mitigate the impact of primary renovation and related work on affected tenants while the work is done, for example, relocation costs. The work need to wait a minimum 60 days from the declaration of service before starting primary renovation, the work. Next, please. Okay, here, please welcome my co-worker Linda to introduce Just Reasonable program. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I'll be explaining the Just and Reasonable program. The program, the mechanism is to obtain a just and reasonable return on investment, and you must provide 2 profit and loss statements for the property, one for the base year and another for the current year, unless suffering an operating loss in the current year. You need to provide income. The income and expense statements can be from the prior owner. Analysis is based upon the total number of units on the parcel. To determine whether you're eligible for a JNR increase, your current year net income must be less than the base year adjusted net income. LAHD approval is required. Rent increases based on a JNR application must be approved by a hearing officer and/or the RAC. Next slide, please. You'll have to submit a $25 application fee. The IRS Form Schedule E or Form 8825, a rent roll, which lists all the units, monthly rent, and total collected per unit. If 1977 is not your base year, provide a clear and convincing detailed statement explaining the attempts made to retrieve the 1977 financial data, including dates and methods used. Proof of rental income, all expense invoices, receipts, and proof of payment, utility bills and proof of payment, property tax statements and proof of payment, insurance declaration and proof of payment. Next slide, please.
Here, what do you guys mean by 1977?
You'll have to find financial data from 1977, and if you cannot, then you'll have to go on to the next year that you could find.
You're talking about profit and loss statement from
Sorry to interrupt. So at the end of the presentation, we'll allow questions to be entered into the chat window, and from there we'll be able to answer the questions. Please allow us to finish the presentation first before asking any questions.
Management expenses are limited to no more than 7% of gross income. Expenses for major repairs must be amortized over a period of 5 or 15 years, depending upon the nature of the work, such as plumbing, roofing, new electrical, etc. Painting and decorating expenses must be amortized over 5 years. Expenses and income must have incurred in the base or current year only. No prepayments or late payments for different years allowed. Next slide, please. The expenses not allowed are debt services, such as mortgage and interest payments, any penalties, fines, or fees, costs already recaptured under programs such as the capital improvement rent surcharges and the RSO SCEP pass-throughs. And now I would turn it over to Natalie to talk about luxury exemptions.
Thank you, Linda. So I'll be discussing about the luxury exemption, which is a permanent exemption from the RSO by obtaining a luxury exemption certificate. The landlord must establish that the rent amounts are on or before May 31st of 1978. The monthly rent charged for the unit on or before May 31st, 1978 must be at least $302 for a unit with no bedrooms, $420 for a unit with one bedroom, $588 for a unit with two bedrooms, $756 for a unit with three bedrooms, and lastly, $823 for a unit with four or more bedrooms. Next slide. The requirements for this program are to submit a $25 application fee and also to submit an application for each unit in which you want the luxury exemption for. You must also submit copies of canceled rent checks and signed rental agreements. LAHD shall only accept documents where the veracity of the signatures can be established by either testimony, notarized declarations from the tenant, or other documents acceptable to LAHD. Next slide, please. This concludes our program overview, and I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to David.
Thank you, Natalie. So here are the contact information for our section. You can reach our rent adjustment section at that following email, lahd-rentadjustment@lacity.org, or our voicemail at 213-928-9063. Please be advised that that is not a live telephone number where a staff member picks up. That's to leave a voicemail. You can also submit general questions 24/7 by going to our website at Ask Housing, and you can ask any question relevant to housing. If you have any general questions about any of our programs within LAHD, you can ask your questions there. Also, you can call our public hotline, and that hotline is for general information. You can also file a complaint or report a violation. And there's also a link as well where you can do that online. But the telephone number is 1-866-557-RENT, RENT, which is 7368. And additionally, for City of Los Angeles residents renter protections, you can visit the following website, which is highlights at rent protections. And lastly, the LAHD general hotline is the telephone number is It's on the next slide, please. 866-557-7368. And also you can RSVP for future workshops by calling the telephone number 213-928-9075.